And joining me now is former Senator and Democrat and now gubernatorial candidate Doug Jones of Alabama. Thank you so much for making time to be here with Meet the Press Now.
My pleasure. Thank you.
Good to see you. And of course, we're stating some of the obvious here. This is tough terrain. You're facing an uphill battle in deep red Alabama. You don't need me to tell you that, sir. So what does your path to victory look like?
You know, this path to victory, quite frankly, is the same one that we took in 2017. You know, Alabama had not elected a Democrat in 25 years when I ran in 2017. We were able to talk about the very things that Democrats are focusing in on now, and that is kitchen table issues, affordability, building coalitions among everyone in this state from one end of the state and every zip code across the state. And people are responding to that. People are concerned about what they see going on in Washington, D.C., but more importantly, they're concerned about how to feed their families, how to clothe their families, and their health care, which is a huge cost. So the whole issue of the affordability and kitchen table issues is going to be a big issue. And quite frankly, I think people are ready for a change. People in Alabama do not believe the folks in Montgomery are listening to them and attending to their needs as opposed to the special interests that control most everything down there.
And sometimes context is very important. And the last time that you won statewide in those conditions you talked about, you were up against what we could call a deeply flawed candidate in Roy Moore. And he had been facing sexual misconduct allegations. And you'll likely be facing off after incumbent Senator Tuberville, the football coach. And you lost to him in 2020 by more than 20 points. So why is this race going to be different now? Is it those kitchen table issues you just talked about, or is there something bigger happening?
No, I think there's a combination. I think certainly the kitchen table issues are huge. But, you know, look, all politics is personal. So people want to know, what are you going to do for them and their families? Not in a selfish way, but a survival way. That's what they want to look at. But look, you know, Tommy Tuberville is as deeply flawed as Roy Moore, not in the same way. But he now has a record that is deeply flawed. People of Alabama are going to be re-educated about those flaws, about the times they withheld military nominations, promotions for almost a year, about all of his day trading and while he was on the Agriculture Committee, all of the flaws and the things that he has not done for the people of Alabama. The votes that he has taken in the last year alone are going to really affect Alabamians from one end of the state to the other, and state government, because we're not going to have the same kind of economic benefits and revenue. So he's got a record that he's got to run on this time. He cannot hide like he did in 2020 during COVID. And we're going to make sure people understand and know that. So it is the combination of what we're going to do for the people of Alabama and contrast that with what Tommy Tuberville has done and not done for the people of Alabama.
And often getting a message out like you're describing, that takes cash in the political space. And Senator Tuberville has a major advantage there with cash on hand. As I understand it, of course, he's been in the race longer and he's a sitting senator right now. But as I have seen from the records that the team put together, that he's got like a $6 million advantage over you. How do you make that up? And is there enough time to do it?
Oh, absolutely. There's more than enough time. Look, we have consciously not tried to raise money. We're putting together recruiting candidates.
No one in elective office does. No one consciously tries to not raise money.
No, I didn't say. I'm sorry. I didn't mean it that way. We have not had fundraisers. I've not made calls. We have raised some money, but it has been really organic through some emails and text messages. And we've had like close to 10,000 people that have contributed to this campaign, about 5,000 or 6,000 that came from the state of Alabama. And we have raised a good bit of money for the first like 6 weeks that we've been in the campaign without a full-blown fundraising effort. That's what I was talking about.
I understand you now,
what we're seeing there is momentum. And the second thing I'll tell you is we will run a lean campaign. This is not your grandfather's campaign that we're going to be running. We're not going to be spending all that money on TV ads that very few people watch these days. We're going to go directly to people. We're going to be in every county. We're going to be working with other candidates. And we're going to do the social media things to reach people where Democrats in Alabama haven't been reaching them in a long time. I feel very confident that we're going to have more than enough money to have staff and to run the kind of campaign that is not only going to be competitive, but can win. It won't matter to me how much money he's able to raise from the big mules.
And you do have name recognition in Alabama. You're also in a place where many of your fellow citizens do support President Trump. Are there some places where you agree with what he has done or some of the policies he's attempting to go? I'm clear you're a Democrat and you didn't vote for President Trump. I can assume that. But how do you position yourself against him in this race?
Well, look, I can point to my record back in the Senate when I did things that were supportive of President Trump that I thought were good for Alabama. Those are few and far between right now. You can only look at what's happening to farmers that have lost their markets, our soybean farmers, our cattle farmers. They are hurting right now. And I am not going to support the president's policies that are going to hurt Alabama farmers. The cost of living has gone up under this president. There are all manner of things. And yes, people voted for him, but I can guarantee you that there are folks now looking to see whether or not there are alternatives because they are concerned about their families. They're concerned about where the next meal is going to be. They're concerned about the jobs. And the young people in this state, like the rest of the young people in this country, are very concerned about AI. And this state's not doing very much at all to address the coming issues that we're going to have with our workforce and with AI. There is a lot out there. There's a lot of consternation. I'll give you one example. A man that I met with the other day, he was just taking up the money as I was leaving the parking at the hospital. He looked at me and says, Doug, I hope you're getting back into this game because I vote for Republicans. I've been conservative all my life. He said, but this guy in Washington is scaring the hell out of me. That is not an unusual sentiment right now across the state of Alabama. And we're going to make sure that we're going to be addressing the concerns and the needs of the people in this state everywhere we go.
Well, we are certainly deeply interested in these races around the country. Thank you for being part of our Meet the Candidates series and letting us know your thoughts and views. Appreciate it. Good to see you again, sir.
Good to see you. Take care.
We thank you for watching, and remember, stay updated on breaking news and top stories on the NBC News app or watch live on our YouTube channel.